Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Put Me In Coach, I'm Ready to Scale podcast. I am your host, Eugene Terk. On this show, we cut through the noise to bring you practical ideas, real world experiences, and actionable insights from business coaches and growth minded leaders who are in the trenches every day. We aren't just talking about big ideas. We're talking about execution and hopefully helping you master leadership, alignment, accountability, and strategy to successfully scale your business. As a reminder, each and every episode is brought to you by Align, the strategic planning and execution software designed to keep your team focused on what matters most. From KPI dashboards to daily huddles, Align helps you create clarity and drive consistent execution. As a listener of the podcast, you can get 10% off of your new subscription. Just head over to aligntoday.com to sign up for an introductory demo and be sure to use promo code podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. And now let's jump into today's conversation. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Put Me In Coach, I'm Ready to Scale. As always, I am your host, Eugene Terk. Thank you so much for joining us, and we appreciate having you with us. This afternoon, I have the great pleasure of speaking with Tim Winter. Tim is a business coach and a well-seasoned professional in the construction space who's sort of done it all, seen it all, and is now helping others work through those obstacles and challenges. And so it is great having him. And Tim, thank you so much for joining me.
Eugene, thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you today and share some insights and maybe some pain points and how we can help some others.
Absolutely. That's what our goal is. Tim, help us better understand sort of your entrepreneurial journey. Sort of where did you start? Where did you come from? And sort of how did you get into the coaching space where you are now?
Yeah, sure. So I'll give you the high level, right? So I've always been around construction since I was a kid. My dad used to buy houses, fix them up, rent them out. So I was free labor until I got wise enough to ask for money. And so I've always been intrigued by seeing things kind of start as, nothing or dilapidated and becoming something beautiful, kind of seeing that vision of things come to life. And so as I transitioned out of college, I went to work for a national production home builder and spent about 7 years there, just really learned the business, the ins and outs of what it's like to build a schedule, to build a house, to cost a house, all the things that go into the construction. But again, just really enjoyed kind of seeing the beginning and the end of that whole kind of process come together. It's just been exciting. And then I went and launched my own construction company in 2007, right when everything was collapsing. I didn't know any better. I was young, dumb, and naive. I was 27 at the time. Hit the friends and family network and just kind of played in that world and just continued to grow a business. And through that process, really just fell in love with the construction industry and just the people that are involved with it, the challenges that we face, the highs and lows that come with it. And in 2019, I hired my first executive coach, scaling up coach, a good friend of mine, Trey, who came alongside me in a time where I was kind of struggling in the business a little bit. And for me, that was the hinge point that really changed the trajectory of kind of how I seen business. Because like most business owners, you're good at the craft, you're good at being involved, you're good at building things. I wasn't as good as building the business. So having a coach come alongside me and kind of walk me through how to, build the business, not just build the product, was a crucial kind of component. We spent a couple years building through some of the things and training. I still work together to this day. So as I've gone through and grown the business and made some even, challenging mistakes through that and after COVID years and then how things have slowed, it really just showed me that I want to go help young Tim. I think at the end of the day, going through when I was, 27, starting this business, if I would have had somebody at that early stage to coach me, to guide me, to lead me, I look about all the mistakes that I would not have made. So my vision behind coaching is really how do I go help young Tim and even Tim, when he was, 10 or 12 years into the business and didn't know kind of how to run a business exactly, right? The business was kind of running me. And then Trey came along and helped, me kind of get unstuck and get processes in place. So really this whole journey is like, how do I go help other people to help them excel and help them elevate and get unstuck from where I was?
And so, I mean, obviously, you've now spent more than, 2 decades as a custom home builder and general contractor. I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit more to sort of that exact moment, that tipping point, that breaking point where you realized that you needed to stop building just projects and wanted to start building sort of a replicable, repeatable business system or a product, as you put it. You ultimately went and got a coach, but I'm wondering a little bit more if you could talk about what it was that made you realize that was the time that you needed to go do that.
Well, I think like most business owners, right, you build the business around you. And so in 2017-ish, 2018, I had a back issue. I ended up laying on the family room floor for about 6 or 7 weeks, could barely walk, self-induced from a mountain climb situation that I was doing. But I learned that like you can't run a business from the family room floor. You can't build everything around you. And so coming out of that season is when I realized is like I need help. I need to figure out how to have this business run not 100% with me, but kind of me as a higher level leader and owner of this business instead of being the one that everything revolves around, right? Because if I'm out, who's doing the work, right? And at that point, I had a couple employees and other people were able to surround me during that time, but I was still, making calls from the floor, doing things like that. And so for me, that was one of those pivotal moments. And I'm like, this has to be able to run more than just me because if I'm out, I'm not only impacting my family, I'm impacting the families that of employees that work for me. So that was one piece of it. And then another piece was just knowing that how important it is to, if you're going to scale, right, you have to get out of the way a little bit. You're only gonna be able to get so far. So it's a combination of being able to run the business when you're not there, and then also being able to scale. So two of those things, you become the roadblock. So in order to get to that next level, I needed to either learn how to remove that roadblock, and that's where the coach came in and really helped me see things differently and put things into perspective on how I can actually run a business and not be run by the business.
And you also, in sort of your introduction, you talked about sort of the young Tim learning from your mistakes. And I'm wondering if you sort of look back at your early years now, if you could identify sort of the single most expensive mistake that you made that taught you the most about operations and running a business.
Cash flow.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
that's
what does that mean? A little,
yeah,
break that
that's
down for me.
yeah, just 2 words, right? Just understanding, the X's and O's of the cash in the business, the cash out of the business, right? Most builders and trades in the construction space, we're good at the craft. We're good at making sure the project runs on time, is built, the quality, all of those things are there. But nobody's really ever showed us, at least me at 27, how to manage the financial component of the business. What does it look like? How are you paying yourself? How are you paying your vendors? What does that whole situation look like? And so that's the most expensive because that's the money, right? That's the piece that controls, that's the lifeblood of the business. And when you go through those cycles of good cash flow, bad cash flow, right? What are you doing to manage that? And it's taken years to kind of get that, dialed in. And it's something I think most businesses, even myself at times, we still kind of go through some challenges there. But I think if I had to go back and talk to 27-year-old Tim, I would really drill down on spending time in the financials,
Yeah.
understanding that more than anything else.
Yeah. And so now you have a coaching practice called RenderCo, the RenderCo Network. And I'm just curious because render in the construction space, and I'm not in the construction space, but rendering means to an architectural drawing or restoring an old wall. So I'm curious why you chose that specific word for your coaching network, and what does it mean to render a business back to its sort of intended design?
Yeah. So if you think about that word, rendering it back to its intended design is kind of the vision behind it. The construction industry for many years, it's broken because there's a lot of us running businesses in a broken fashion. So going back and rendering the business to back to way it should be, going back to the basics of business is the vision behind RenderCo. It's helping the builders, the trades, the GCs take their business back the way that it should be, going back to that model of how it should look, how it should be run, right? Putting together an actual, rendering of what it should and what it could look like.
You already spoke sort of about, and I think maybe this is the way you got into it, is that because a lot of contractors are incredibly skilled at their trade, and so they start a business and they hit a ceiling when they try to scale. I'm just curious why, I'm sure you've probably seen this, why being a great craftsman is often the biggest bottleneck to becoming a successful business owner.
Yeah, because when you're, a great project manager or a plumber or craftsman or whatever it is that you're doing day to day, you're focused on what you're working on in that moment, or you're moving the schedule, or you're moving the project along. You're paying attention to that quality. You're paying attention to those things that are right in front of you. And sometimes when you're not running the business, it's almost two different lenses that you're looking at. Like you're looking at the quality, you're looking at things you can see in advance. Where you're stepping back and looking at the business, now you're looking at high level. And a lot of us can't see things at high level because we're so used to being in the weeds and being in the trenches. So we revert right back to what we know, what we were good at, and that's where we spend our time and our focus. And then, we lose track of what we should be focused on, like sending in invoices to collect payment or creating change orders so that we can get paid for the work that the clients are asking for extra. All of those things that don't come natural to us are the things that fall to the wayside, or the things that actually impact us and hurt our business the most.
Is there also an element of I'm really good at this craft, and I don't believe necessarily that others can do it as well as I can? And so there is a little bit of a fear of letting go in order to be able to focus on the non-craft part of the business?
Oh, absolutely. I think that's one of the biggest thing with most, business owners, no matter what trade phase, your industry that you're in, you don't want to let go of control. It's just
Right.
easier for you to do it yourself instead of training somebody else. Right? Because you're thinking about the time it takes to train this person to do X, Y, and Z. I could have had it done. And so you don't even spend the time thinking about training. You're just like, I'm just going to do it. And then as things pile up, and eventually you burn out. And that was one of the other things that I've experienced with that is like you end up burning out because you're doing everything instead of taking the time to hire and train somebody to realize that yes, it costs you time and money to hire that person, but really you're elevating yourself because now you're able to do more of what you're good at, and it pulls you out of the weeds, which most of us we don't think like that.
You talked about, your own experience sort of having a back injury and laying on the living room floor and being sort of, I guess, owned by the business because you were still answering phone calls and doing things sort of from the discomfort of being at home. How do you coach a builder to shift their identity from, the one who does everything and chief firefighter to becoming a true CEO?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really one day at a time, right? Starting to break some of those habits. And if you have one or two people on your team, what are you doing to train them? What are some things that you can slowly start to delegate? I think that's the biggest thing is just slow delegation. Hey, take this off my plate? What are some things that you can come off? Looking at those things like, do you really need to be doing that? I mean, I even do that with some of my team. Like when they're working on something, hey, what's something that you could take off of your plate and give it to somebody else on the
Yeah.
team to focus on that, right? I think one of the keys is passing the baton of delegation. A lot of business owners are terrible at the delegation because they want to hold it tight, they don't want to let it go, or they don't want to take the time to let the person make the mistake, right? So put some parameters, put some accountability in there as well as you delegate, is one of those keys that I would, definitely coach. We definitely coach our construction business owners on.
And so, as part of your coaching, I know you've created sort of a proprietary assessment, the Render Score. And as I understand it, it evaluates businesses across, I think, seven distinct dimensions. Without giving away the whole test, I'm just curious if you could speak to the one dimension that most established business owners, general contractors score the lowest on when they first come to you for coaching and assistance.
A lot of time it's the owner's health. It's it's the person it's the personality, right? It's when you're working all those hours, you're missing time with your kids or your wife. You could be burnt out. You're not taking care of your health, right? There's all of those things. To me, I've seen a few that have taken it and they've been, mid plus on there, but most are low in that owner's health because they're stressed, they're stuck, they're challenged by this business. And I think that's the piece that nobody ever looks at. How can we help the owner learn to lead themselves, care for themselves? Because it starts with you. If you lead yourself well, then you can start to lead others. But if you're not leading and caring for yourself, how can you care for your team? How can you care for your subs? So that is one that is the why I built that score. I put that question in because that was some of the challenge that I had, right?
Yeah.
Where was I going through some of these challenges? I went through a season of depression in this business, went through physical pain in this business. Like there's all of those things. So for me, that owner's health, I think, is the most important of the seven, and it's ranked a lot of times the lowest.
Right. And so, as part of your coaching blueprint, I know you have something called Render Truth, which is sort of getting to the honest, sometimes painful diagnosis of reality. And I'm just curious, what is the number one lie or blind spot that construction owners and business owners sort of tell themselves about their financials or their operations?
Well, I think the biggest lie is that even though you have money in the bank, doesn't mean you have cash flow, doesn't mean you have the right accounting. So you look at your bank account, you see your cash, that's how you're running your business, which most contractors, that's what they do. And that is probably the biggest lie. They're not looking at going back to your the previous answer, they're not looking at the financials right. And I think that's the biggest lie, one of the biggest lies. There's a few of them, but that's probably one of the biggest is like looking at the bank account, thinking that you're doing well.
Yeah. And then from render truth, we move into render design, which focuses on building an operating model that can run without you, without the owner. What is if I was to come to you, what would be the very first system or standard an overwhelmed construction owner or remodeler should delegate in order to claw back 5 to 10 hours a week? What is the thing that they can give up first in order to be able to get some more time in the week for themselves?
I guess it depends on the business and kind of the size, like their staffing of what they have. But one of the first things is has to do is probably with something with like selection management. A lot of us get stuck into what's the paint color, what's the trim material, what's the plumbing fixture. That's something that can easily be delegated to somebody on your team that can do a lot of that, or you can hire an interior designer that can come in and take that off your plate and giving you the parts and pieces that you need. That's one area that we look at. Another area is software, right? A lot of our builder clients don't use any software. They're using a spreadsheet or they're running a schedule off of maybe a Microsoft project if they're that sophisticated. If not, it's mostly an Excel sheet or a lot of times it's a back of a napkin, piece of paper. So software, we've partnered with a software company called Resio that is amazing back office solution, schedules, financial management, subcontractor management, even a communication tool. There's an awesome tool in there where you can communicate directly with the client so everything stays in that portal, nothing gets lost. But I would say those are probably two big pieces where people can delegate in this world is like what can you do from a selections, finishes component that we get pulled into a lot of times by hiring an outside designer or somebody on your team that can take that off your plate. And then the biggest one is really the software that can do a lot of the work for you, especially now with AI. There's AI components to this that can analyze a lot of the work. A lot of contractors are kind of not using AI or kind of maybe running from it. But that software and that coordination are two of the big tools that I would recommend. out of the
I'm
gate.
sure the use of AI in the construction space is inevitable. Um, and then I know as part of your coaching, you run cohorts and sort of group coaching sessions. And I'm wondering, from your perspective, why is peer accountability in a room full of others like yourself such an effective tool for business growth?
I think this industry is one where we don't talk well to each other, so it's almost like an indirect forced conversation. The cohorts that I've run with the peers that I've got, it's awesome to see them chattering, texting now. We got a text group with each cohort. Um, it's amazing the questions that they ask each other, right? Some are in the same market, some aren't in the same market. Um, that peer accountability, you just see each other's excelling. Like last week, we do an accountability check every Friday, and one guy's in more of a spec world. He put one of his houses under contract, and just the camaraderie of the texts that come in. Hey, congrats! This is awesome. Somebody had a question about, hey, I'm struggling with filling in, some scope of work. I've got a lot of scope gaps. Someone chimed in, hey, have you tried to use Claude to review your scope document? So it's just that accountability and that quick response is so inevitable in this space. One-on-one is great when you're trying to get dialed in and you're getting somewhere quicker. But what I've realized is with the cohorts, you're not only getting the experience of, myself, but now you've got other guys that are doing or other girls that are doing certain things that you can collaborate on, which is really cool. And that's why I've created it that way because I see a lot of not only the accountability, but I see just learning from each other. Hey, what vendor are you using or what product are you using? I'm working on this. So it's just collaboration. It's really
Yeah.
been a great collaboration.
Group. It's a valuable resource that you can call upon to really, get things and answers and quickly. Um, as an outsider, it certainly looks like the building, remodeling, commercial or residential construction spaces have faced lots of obstacles between supply chain, labor, interest rate swings over the last couple of years. I'm just curious, what do you see as the biggest structural risk that construction owners need to protect their businesses against right now?
It's been, an up and down cycle here, probably since COVID, right? Just a lot of
Yeah.
changes, price increases. I hate to keep going back to this, but it's paying attention to those numbers because if you're not pricing your jobs right, right, you're not realizing that, or you don't have documentation right in your contracts or in your scope of work, a lot of contractors through those COVID phases got crushed because they didn't have price increases in their contracts. So just making sure you're putting things like that into your agreement so that if there is a huge spike in, a raw material or something like that, you can go back to the client and say, hey, look, I'm not doing this. This raw material, this product increased. I'm just passing this through. It's a way to be transparent, but it's also protecting your margin and your bottom line, and it's protecting you from going out of business.
Yeah.
And fortunately, a lot of, contractors aren't thinking that way because they're just worried about building the project, getting it done, and they're not paying attention that they just lost $30,000 because of all these price increases that happened over the 6 or 8 months they've been building the project.
Tim, just to wrap up, so if there's a contractor who's out there who's listening to this and they may be sitting in their work truck right now, maybe they're feeling a little buried by the chaos of their business or their late night what ifs, they're kind of too deep in all of the things. What's the single most impactful action that you think they could take in, say, the next few days or in the first weeks to really start restoring order in their business?
I think taking a few steps back and just getting high level for a little bit, right? Getting out of the weeds, look at their pipeline, look at the project that they've got going on, and just ask some questions, right? If I got pulled out of this business, what would happen tomorrow? What would
Yeah.
happen next week? Right? If I got stuck laying on a family room floor for 6 weeks, what would this do to my business? How would I change that? I think asking some of those questions, right? Where's the bottleneck? Is it me? Okay, how do I remove that bottleneck? What are some things I need to do? Where can I delegate? What does my financial management look like? I mean, there's a lot to that, but I really that kind of core is if I can't work tomorrow, what happens to this business?
Yeah. Awesome. For everybody who wants to learn more about Tim, you can visit his website, renderconetwork.com, RenderCo network.com. You can actually go and take the render score assessment there and sort of do that. Tim, one of the things that I like to finish with is if there's a book out there that you are recommending to all of your coaching clients or companies that you're working with that you would encourage others to read, what would that be?
There's a book that a good friend of mine wrote. It's called Leading Yourself by Mac Lake. Just a great book. It goes back to even like what we talked about today. What are you doing to lead yourself? How are you doing that? It goes back to that health question in the assessment. I think it's a valuable book. It'll help once you learn to lead yourself, then you're able to go lead others.
Fun question. What's your favorite place to visit in the world?
Favorite place to visit in the world? It's probably Italy. We've been there a handful of times and great food, great wine, great people. I don't have a specific spot in Italy, but Italy.
All over. And then finally, a question that's near and dear to my heart. If there was a musical act or a band, dead or alive, that you've never seen in concert that you wish you could, who would that be? I'm in New Orleans, so music is a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
That's why I ask everyone this question.
Oh, that's a great question. I would probably go see Queen.
Oh, I actually recently watched the movie with Rami Malek. It was incredible. It was
Yeah,
such a
movie was good.
great, yeah,
Yeah.
he did a great job really sort of, embodying Freddie Mercury in that movie. And yes, seeing Queen would have, especially in Wembley, that last, Live
Oh
Aid
yeah.
concert,
That's awesome.
unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I grew up.
Unbelievable.
My uncles and my parents would play it all the time. So it was just one of those things when you first asked that question, I'm like, yeah, that took me back to childhood.
Yeah. Awesome. Tim, always a pleasure speaking with you. I appreciate you taking the time, sharing your wisdom. Obviously, this is really valuable information for business owners in the construction space, but I think that there's real value that can be applied in any industry about understanding your cash flow and taking a step back and looking at things at a higher level and working really on the business to remove yourself from it, because that's really the way to grow and scale. So, always appreciate it. Thank you so very much and I hope you have a fabulous day.
Thanks. Appreciate you having me on.
My pleasure.